Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Guest today is Stephen Hong. Stephen, it's really good to meet you. Thanks for coming on. Could you just let us know where you're calling in from, first of all, and also, what you do for a living with Nimo Nutrition?
Yeah, no, I'm from Southern California.
Cool.
My name is Steven. We started Nimo during the pandemic. I think we were kind of we're in the vaping industry, and I know me and a lot of other people had the PMTA coming out, and that's kind of what put everyone at a point where you like decide to pivot or not. And so for me, I had always wanted to start a business, and I've always been an advocate for the plant, for THC. And when I saw the opportunity to get into market, I knew I had to get in somehow. So I guess that's kind of where it all started. I hired a few of my friends from high school, and we kind of just went to town. We made a website, we started cold calling, and I guess from there we kind of just try to build it as much as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when did you actually get your start? I mean, when was kind of the original idea for the brand, and when was your actual launch date? What year was that in? Just curious. 2020
It was
during COVID, or?
Yeah, so the actual launch date was around November 2020.
Gotcha.
So it was like a month after the whole PMTA letter came out and said, hey, no more. So that's kind of where that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so I'm curious with this. I mean, obviously, so you have the website. Is this something that you're able to sell like online direct to consumer, or are you forced to kind of do like B2B that way and selling it into like dispensaries and stuff like that? Or what does that kind of look like? I know Adult Eight's a little different. So
yeah, so for us personally, we did a lot of B2B because that's what I knew how to do. So to answer your question, we can do B2C. We're dipping more into that. We have a B2C base, but we're looking to grow it more. So there is individual states have their own regulations, but overall, federally, it's legal federally. Yeah.
yeah, so you basically just trying to like market to and take advantage of states where like they don't have a specific regulation around Delta 8, so they're able to actually you'll buy direct from you guys. Is that most states, or I think
Exactly.
most people probably don't know, but how many states are you able to actually sell D2C in right now?
It's always changing. It's like changing weekly, daily. There's always news about who's able to do it or who's not. There's accurate information. There's a lot of, I guess, fear mongering. I can't give you the exact number, but I would say about half. And there's D8 and there's D9 as well. So D9 is probably more legal and more available in other states.
Why is that? What's the main difference there?
I think it's more of the legality side of it, because Delta 8 that comes from. So I guess it's more not that it's more popular, but that there's more people allowing it. I think it has to do with regulations. I can't get too deep into that because I don't want to give out any bad information. So
yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, and then I know, like, at least where I am in New York, I mean, I see Delta 8 everywhere that I go, and it's, but I have not seen anything Delta 9. I've certainly heard of it, but it's not something that's available in New York, or at least maybe it's just not being sold as much. But
okay.
So you operate specifically with Delta 8 products, right? So
we have some Delta 9 products as well too.
Oh, you do? Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess, what makes this a little different and able to like sell like on a federally compliant product like this rather than maybe a more traditional kind of like, edible just straight up THC style? Like what's the main difference, and why is it treated differently, do you think?
So the reason it's treated differently is that it's considered hemp under the definition of the law. So
I see. Okay.
Cannabis has its own licensing and whole other regulations. And so what can happen is that like the hemp industry has a whole blueprint to a faster, I guess, legalization. Like if there was a mass legalization, like this is kind of how it would look like.
Right.
I think if you were to kind of see the cannabis industry, you could see like, they only give a limited amount of licenses. There's a lot of monopoly. There's a lot of corruptness, I guess. So that's kind of where the difference lies in between the two. So there are different hemp programs opening up in different states, but ultimately it's because it's federally legal. It kind of gives that the ability to sell it across state lines and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense because I know I've talked to some other business owners who aren't even necessarily doing a product like yours, but it's something that has like cannabinoids in it, and just for
Mhm.
that sake alone, they have issues like shipping over state lines because it's federally regulated practice.
Mhm.
So it's really interesting. I don't think it's talked about enough. There's not really a lot of like clarity out there as far as like information goes. I mean, there's a lot of obviously like fear mongering and things going on at a high level like behind closed doors. And so how did you kind of obviously knowing that going into this business, what did you kind of notice out there in the market that was like maybe not being done, or maybe just like a specific like type of person that maybe wasn't being marketed to with these types of products, like knowing that it's obviously an enhanced challenge to just be in this space in general. What did you kind of notice out there that you want to do differently with your product?
Yeah, I guess early on when we were kind of entering the market, I guess the people that were around were kind of always marketing that whole 1,000 milligram death edible, like get you
Yeah.
high kind of thing. So
Yeah.
our approach was kind of like, can my grandma look at this and see it as something that she'd be willing to try? Or can my mom look at it and be like, hey, she's, traditionally she's from Korea. My parents are from Korea. They're super traditional. So they could look at it, and I wanted to create something parents were able to look at and be like, hey, I'll try this,
Yeah, it's not
So
something so like, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like almost every other brand. It's just like, how much can we pack into this thing? And it's like, why do you even want that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
no, I definitely get that. And I definitely see that kind of disparity. I mean, like, you go to dispensaries in New York, all that they're selling are like, 10 pieces is 1,100 milligrams a piece. Like, I don't even know. Like, I can't even imagine what that's like. I would not even
Yeah.
try.
Like I don't even take those personally. So
Yeah, no, so yeah,
yeah.
that definitely makes a lot of sense. And obviously,
Mhm.
D2C in this area is definitely something that's growing, but is definitely, I don't think there's really like a super established player in this, at least that I know about, other than maybe like Camino that's out there that I'm familiar
Yeah.
with. So I think this is definitely a really growing category in these with these types of products. So I suppose just wanted to ask, like, obviously you're very D2C driven. Can you give me kind of a breakdown between like, how much you're doing in like wholesaling or like through retail channels versus what you're doing in D2C? And is it just the website, or do you exist on any like other kind of marketplaces or anything like that?
So D2C, we just started
Oh, okay.
we just started D2C. I guess any of our customers that are retail come from, a lot of places that we've done business with, drop shipping, things like that. So some of those customers are off the market now. So a
Hmm.
lot of the people that they did business with come to us. So we just started B2C. Are you asking kind of revenue wise?
Oh yeah, just like not like specific like numbers or anything. I'm just curious like how much business you're doing selling like B2B versus what you're doing direct to consumer, I suppose.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's mainly B2B. So like I would say
Hmm.
like 60% would be B2B, and then like
Okay.
the rest would be B2C.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's still a pretty high number though. Doing almost half of your stuff D2C is
Yeah.
actually higher than I was expecting. So that's interesting. And what do you kind of find as like like obviously when you sell D2C, the advantages you have advantages insofar as like you get a little bit more customer data, a little bit more direct interaction. So
Mhm.
based on what you can tell when you're selling D2C, what does your general like demographic psychographic look like? Is it like older, younger, male, female? What do you kind of find as your like carving out as an ideal customer that's buying direct from you guys?
Yeah, so originally I thought it was going to be more of like the younger hippie crowd, people that
Hmm.
are more open to alternative medicines. But to my surprise, there was a lot of people, I guess you can say our moms, grandparents, and kind of what I had envisioned. They kind of came true. Is like some of the people that prefer the 2,500 milligrams,
Yeah.
they would see my product and they'd be like, "Hey, I'll try one. It's good, but let me give this to my parents." Like,
Hmm.
for some reason, we've came across that phenomenon a lot where it's like it's approachable for their parents. So I think our target demographic is more on it, like 45 to 60 male, female, more leaning towards the female side.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and this is what I wanted to ask because I'm always interested to hear like what people kind of find as their ideal customer going in, who they're trying to target versus who is actually the ones buying. And
Yeah.
I can't say I'm surprised, but just basically just off of what you said is like you wanted to make it approachable for that crowd going in, so I'm
Hmm.
not surprised that people are taking advantage of that for
Yeah.
kind of like more like I don't call it, it's not even low potency, just reasonable potency in my mind. It's
Yeah.
like so yeah that's really interesting. And what kind of obviously with any products like this, because there's so many misconceptions and misnomers and like just like falsities out there, how do you kind of take it upon yourself to like do kind of like some consumer education that way? Is there anything on the bottle that kind of like explains what it is, or especially like somebody like maybe like in the older generation, maybe was traditionally not like really open to things like this, maybe like no trying for the first time. How do you go about kind of doing some like consumer education in that way?
Yeah, so our website for the most part has most of the information. If they're like, we make sure, at least if they have any questions, like any outreach to us, we make sure they always have like a lot to kind of go off of. Like, or I'll give them articles, we'll give them whatever they need. But for the most part, there's a lot of information on the bottle itself. But in terms of the THC portion, it's kind of like, yeah, it's mostly on the website, kind of explains to them like, hey, this isn't just your normal gummy. This has THC in it. If you never tried it, you might want to try one bite before you try the second. If you don't feel it, you might want to try two. Don't take it excessively. There's like, the hazard, don't drive while you take it like that. So there's those types of things on the bottle where it kind of keeps the customer safe. I think that's kind of our number one concern.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair enough. And then you kind of leave like some articles and stuff on the website for more just like, people wanting more information about, like this category in general and things like that. And obviously when people reach out, you help them out and try to answer their questions.
Exactly. And I don't think we'll ever stop trying to figure out ways to make that even better. But that's kind of where it's at right now.
Yeah, I think it's so important because like, something that keeps coming up in our conversation is like, new areas of people like willing to try, like THC based products, whether they're gummies or, like vape cartridges or any kind of things like that, whatever the delivery vehicle is. I think there's like the older generations are becoming much more open to, utilizing, these types of remedies for very like real problems, not even just for recreation. So
yeah.
And then I guess I'm curious, like, when you do have people like writing in, asking you specific questions after they buy from you, or even maybe before, what are some like kind of common like questions that people have that seem to be rooted in maybe like misinformation, or do you find any kind of like trends and that way when people reach out to you directly with questions?
Surprisingly, we don't have a lot of people. I think maybe there's times where people were like, hey, this was a little bit stronger, or this kind of made me dizzy. But I think even my dad, when I had let him try it for the first time, but this wasn't the gummy, this was like just herb itself, and this was a groundbreaking moment for me. But when he was able to try it, he kind of told me like, hey, I feel kind of dizzy. And I kind of thought about it, and it's like when you don't know the feeling of being high, like it's kind of hard to kind of explain what you're actually feeling. I think the more you do it, you can kind of tell exactly what it is. But I think that's kind of what that is.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And yeah, apparently, I mean, obviously, the experience doing it like through an edible vehicle versus like, smoking or something else is obviously an entirely different experience too. It lasts much longer. It can be a little bit more potent, but I think it depends a lot more on like, the person's physiology. I feel like a little bit more, with the way that you're digesting when you're doing the edible form as well.
Exactly. Because there's people that would take one and they would feel, the way they want to. Some people will take one, they don't feel anything at all. Some people need to take 7 and then they'll feel it. And it's it does all depend on the person's body and how they're feeling or where their body is at that day.
Yeah, no, it's so true, and that's good that you have like some of like instructions to that point of somebody who's maybe trying this for the first time, because you never know how it's going to affect you personally. So having some directions to just say like, if you've never used THC in your life, like maybe just like cut one in half and try that first. I think that's good, because you obviously doing something like this, you don't want people to be like get like super anxious because they did too much, and it's all so yeah, that's good that you take kind of like precautions and like inform people that way to make sure people are like using it in a safe way first and foremost. I think
exactly.
it's good, for the space that you have on the actual bottle, right?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So, and then do you find like specific? I mean, obviously, there's only certain states where you can sell this, but it seems like it's almost half a state, so that's pretty wide ranging. But I mean, do you find kind of you're in California, so I mean, I wouldn't assume, but it might be true that you maybe have more of a D2C or direct to consumer base in California. Do you find that to be the case, or do you find that it's actually rooted elsewhere?
It's actually rooted elsewhere. Our idea in the beginning was to tackle the east side and then back towards us, because I felt like marketing to people that have, I guess, regular THC is so accessible here.
That is
and
true.
More on the West Coast. I want to kind of give it to an area where they don't have that and they need something. So that's kind of where I started in that. So actually, there's not much B2C in the West side in California as opposed to the East side area. Yeah,
it's actually. If you would have just told me that without explaining it, I feel like I would have been surprised just because you're based in California. But it is true. I mean, it's so crazily accessible in California that it's like, I feel like you don't have to go far to get something. Like, why would you wait to order it and wait for it to come in? But I guess with some places, they probably don't have that accessibility. Like even in New York, where I am in upstate New York, I mean, I would have to drive almost an hour to find like a legit dispensary to go to if I wanted to buy something like this. And I didn't even realize that there were options to do D2C like this through Delta 8 channels, which like I've definitely had. And so I'm familiar with that. and I mean, it's like similar enough for my taste. I just didn't know that Delta 8 was available to be ordered, because I know like typical that THC based stuff is not able to be shipped across state lines. So that's really interesting. Yeah. And
yeah, because normally there was I think the biggest reason why that is because the advertising space for our industry is considered, I mean, for a long time, I guess still now too, is considered high risk with other industries. So it's like bank processing, advertising, all that was kind of a challenge for a lot of companies. And I think now we're starting to see some like options and some ways, and it seems like they're starting to accept some sort of advertising and getting a little bit more lenient on that side.
Yeah, a little more flexible, like giving people options to actually like. I mean, if it's gonna be legal to be able to do it, I mean, there's no reason to have such like stringent regularities like around the other things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very cool, and I mean, you're obviously growing like with an industry, like as it's growing to be like a nationwide thing. Obviously, in California, it's not new for Californians. It's not new for the Coloradoans. Is that what you call them? But yeah, definitely in the East Coast, it's definitely very new. And I mean, maybe not like culturally, but definitely like from a legal standpoint and from an availability standpoint, it's definitely very new on the East Coast, even in like a metro area like New York. And certainly when you go down the East Coast, it's very, very, I think, very new for a lot of folks down there, where it's been very stringent for so long. So that's awesome, man. It's very, very fascinating. All these products. I always enjoy having conversations in the kind of we'll call it. I was going to say cannabis, but that's not what this is. This is hemp derived, as you say. So it's really fascinating. And I guess one thing I'm curious about is when you think about the manufacturing process or sourcing ingredients for making these things, or just like sourcing it in general. Do you find any kind of like difficulties working with those partners? Are they? I assuming that they're like very, very highly regulated.
Yeah.
What was that kind of process like for you in finding like a supplier for these products to turn into the brand?
Yeah, I think in the beginning that was kind of like our biggest concern is like, hey, we're gonna do this. Like, we want to make sure that like our product is good and like more than good, like safe. So I think when we reached out to the suppliers, we would ask the same thing as like other people would ask us, like, hey, do you have third-party lab testing? Are you guys a reputable company? Like, we'll do like a reverse search on them and make sure that they're taking care of other bigger companies and things like that. And rather than us so we kind of took that approach and made sure that all the ingredients were safe and coming from a good place, so that we would kind of have to worry less about the quality and kind of just always have the confidence.
Yeah, so that I could see that. Yeah, so you kind of had these like questions coming to you in turn of people like curious before they buy from you. They want to know all these things, so you basically just turn around and like relay your customers' concerns to where it's the sourcing is coming from. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we'll reach out to a few people and be like, hey, like this is what our plan is, like the dosage and whatnot. Like, hey, is it safe? Like what? So we'll get a lot of people letting us know. I've spoke to a few, maybe one or two nutritionists on that alone.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess for the purposes of something like this, obviously it's a difficult thing to kind of like do on your own and test or like make new flavors like in your own home. Like maybe somebody selling like some kind of like packaged food would be, obviously, like it's a very like it's a different process. A lot goes into it, obviously. So how do you go about like testing for new flavors? Do you have to work and do like purchase samples from these manufacturers in order to do that, or how do you kind of go about it?
Actually, no, we R&D all our own flavors. We actually went through probably like 200 flavors. Whenever we have, actually, we'll probably do an R&D of a few different things that we'd like every day for a long time. I mean, we don't really do much right now because we have like the recipes that we like and we would just use those.
Right.
But there was a long portion of where we would just buy flavors online from like all these different companies and try out. Because when I was working in the vape industry, like my biggest thing was like creating cool flavors or whatnot. So it kind of just translated into the same thing where, I mean, now I was in vaping and now I'm eating it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And well, Steven, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on again, man. I always love having conversations in the space again. I'll say it again. And I appreciate all your insights, coming from like kind of new player and doing some innovative things with it, like, shipping over state lines is obviously a big challenge, and it seems like you're tackling it and doing things the right way. So I really appreciate that. And I think it's important for people to know that there's, very reputable Delta 8 vendors out there. Unfortunately, at least in my experience in New York, the Delta 8 is kind of like the the thing you can buy in a bodega when you know for like that you can buy there, because like you can only buy like THC based products out of dispensaries that are like really hard to get into and like overly expensive. So there's a lot there, like you say, like there's a lot of fear mongering and kind of like misinformation out there. So I think if anybody wants to, you know, get the real information about what Delta 8 products are all about, I mean, obviously point people in the direction of your website, and also just, you know, let everybody know, feel free to plug your website, your socials, any way to, you know, people can keep in touch with you, whether they want to buy or maybe potentially partner with you in a business capacity. Let everybody know how to stay in touch.
Yeah, so you can hit us up at Nimo-nutrition.com, and our Instagram is Nimo.nutrition. And you could reach out and we'll answer any question to best of our ability. And yeah, I don't think people will be disappointed. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you again. Thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Yeah.
And I wish you good luck and nothing but continued success, man.
Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure being here.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Steven. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right, man. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too.